Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie. Sorry there's been a bit of a delay with videos, with a Polycon and everything like that. It's still kind of crazy and we are exhausted. But getting back into the swing of things after the convention and everything, I thought I'd go through my May TBR. So, as always, I start off with a series completion. And for this month, I am doing Where Dreams Descend and When Night Breaks by Janella Angelis. This is a duology based in a world around Phantom of the Opera, and Moulin Rouge has those vibes. I read the first one. These are both the Owl Crate editions. I read it when it came out in 2019, 2020. This is a completed duology, and I really liked book one. The vibes were really there. I'm a huge Phantom of the Opera fan, and I got a lot of those vibes from what I remember from this book. So I remember ending on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I'm intrigued to see where the story goes in When Night Breaks. Continuing with other series, I have We Three Heroes by Lynette and Noni. This is a companion novella series that is, I believe it's 4.5 in the Medoran Chronicles. So the Medoran Chronicles is a portal fantasy about a young girl named Alex who is going to boarding school in, I think it's like Europe. And then when she goes to the principal's office, she opens the door and falls into this world with magic, fae, elves, all sorts of manner of mythical creatures, and a magical school that she now realizes she has magic and decides to go to this magical school. Befriends three awesome people, and our story goes on from there. But everything's from Alex's perspective. This little novella series, we have 3 novellas in it, follows her 3 best friends in different points in their lives, as well as kind of giving us more context as to things happening around Alex while she's busy trying to save the world, and her friends are trying to keep their own shit together. I love the Medoran Chronicles. The past 2 or 3 books have been fantastic, and I love the story. It's so beautifully woven together. I love Lynette Noni's writing, and I'm really excited to get to this, because then after this, I have the finale, which I am equally excited and terrified to get to. Up next, I have Restless, Slumber by KJ Sutton. This is book 2 in the Fortuna Sworn series. Fortuna Sworn is an adult fantasy romance series following our titular character, Fortuna Sworn, who is a nightmare. And she ends up competing in these games to become the fairy queen of the Unseelie Court. So this is the second book. It's obviously the one I'm currently reading. And we follow the events at the end of book 1. It picks up immediately after the events. And I really like Fortuna. Her being a nightmare, I think, is the most unique aspect. She is not a fae. She's not a fairy. The nightmares are described as beings that are extremely rare and can sense your fear and manipulate you to see your fear play out, where you can ultimately die of fright. And I find that really fascinating, and her now in this role of hers that she has is terrifying for so many reasons. Plus we have a great romance. I'm not sure, I sense a weird love square going on, maybe love triangle. I'm not really sure. She also has this weird imaginary friend that she only sees in her own dreamscape. Plus she made a really good friend with someone who no one else can see, but in the real world, not the dream world. So she's seeing people and befriending them, and I find that extremely fascinating. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a take on mental health illness, or it's just she's a little crazy. Either way, I really enjoyed book 1. I'm about 100 and some pages into book 2, and I'm really enjoying it. We're picking up a lot more pace, and I definitely feel like we have an overarching plot that's about to be introduced to us. Up next, I have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I'm a huge V.E. Schwab fan, and this is her newest novel. This is a standalone, I believe it is a portal fantasy. It is about a young woman named Olivia, where she finds these old journals from her mother filled with information about her past, but with one major theme: never go to Gallant. But Olivia is starting to get beckoned to Gallant through the shadows and through other means, and naturally she disregards her mother's journals and goes to Gallant. And our story goes on from there. This won a ton of awards last year when it dropped. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book. I love B.E. Schwab's writing. It is so whimsical and well written, and just you are dropped into a fantasy world, and it is so immersive. So I'm really excited to finally get to Gallant. I believe there's also pictures in here or something. Oh, these are letters. Yeah, there's definitely pictures in here. I'm definitely pumped to read another V.E. Schwab book. So I've been putting it off because it makes me sad that I've read all of her books, but I really want to get to it. Next I have Fetch, or Five Nights at Freddy's, Fabear Frights #2, Fetch, which is by Scott Cawthon and Andrea Waggner and Carly Ann West. This is the second book in the Fabear Frights little novella big novella series, the first one. I'm slowly working my way through it. The first one was so weird, but these are just really fun stories based in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, which is one of my favorite video games, not to play, to watch other people play. And I love theorizing and joining that whole community. I've done that for the past year or so. It's just kind of a fun pastime that I have. So I have finally caved and started reading the books. Book 1 was weird, but you could definitely draw a bunch of different conclusions to it. So I'm just gonna ride this hype train into the weird stuff. I'm really excited to get to Phasgoo. That I'm really pumped to get to. Plus the illusion discs. I watch a lot of game theory, but really pumped to get into a dog animatronic. Next, I have This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. I love Tahereh Mafi. I loved the Shatter Me series. I loved her contemporary stuff. So when she dropped this new fantasy last year, I was really excited to get into it. So in This Woven Kingdom, we were following two characters. We were following Eliza. Eliza is a princess hiding as a servant. It is her way of protecting herself, as well as her family protecting her. And Cameron is the crown prince, and he starts to suspect Eliza for who she is, and Cameron is really into prophecies. There is a prophecy surrounding his kingdom of this gathering dark, and then he starts to suspect Eliza of being this gathering dark. And Eliza makes a mistake, and her identity is revealed. And our story kind of goes on from there. I've heard, again, nothing but great things about this, and I know I love Tahereh Mafi's writing style. So the second book also just dropped. I believe this is going to be a trilogy, which is not completed. Book 2 just dropped in February. But I wanted to at least get to this once book 2 dropped. So I can jump right into it and not wait 2 years. Just wait maybe a little less than 1. I also heard that this has a bit more romance. Not that Shatter Me didn't have romance, but you had to wait a bit, so I'm intrigued to see what level of romance. This is still technically considered YA. These are longer than all the Shatter Me books, so I'm here for the storytelling and the world building. Up next, I have one of my Book of the Month books, and that is The Last Tale of the Flower by Roshani Chokshi. I love Roshani Chokshi. She's the author of the Gilded Wolves trilogy, which is a trilogy I'll be finishing in the next month or so, but this is her newest release. And this is a gothic fantasy story about a revered storyteller and this whimsical heiress who is his new wife. And they are swapping stories, and a lot of things are about fate. There's a friendship that is doomed to end in tragedy, and so many different interwoven stories surrounding the two of them that they are trading in their new marriage. I'm really excited. I haven't seen a ton of reviews for this, but I've never really read a gothic fantasy that I liked. So I'm intrigued to see if Roshani Chokski's writing will get me more into the subgenre. Next, I have a romance book I picked up on a whim a couple years ago, maybe a year or so ago. I don't really remember. And that is How to Love Your Elf by Kerrelyn Sparks. This is a romantasy story following a young woman named Sorsha who sacrifices herself for her sister, leaving her kingdom for another one. I think it is going to be a forced marriage kind of trope. But on her way to the other kingdom, she runs into this huntsman who figures out who she is and decides to keep her. So I'm intrigued. I know this has a couple of spin-off stories or they're sequels. I have no idea. I saw How to Love Your Elf and I got excited by the title and decided to pick it up because it was on sale that day. Next, I have Fairy Tale by Stephen King. My dad gave me this book to read. He said it was something that I would really like. This follows 17-year-old boy Charlie, who is just kind of going about life, and then he meets this dog and their owner, this old man. They start to connect, and then the old man dies, leaving a cassette tape for Charlie, who listens to it and then essentially falls into this other world. Definitely a portal fantasy. I'm excited to read it. I've heard really good things. I've read a couple Stephen King books in my life. I've never been a big fan, but I've heard this is very different from all of his other writing, so I'm excited to give him a try again. Next, I have Honor Among Thieves by Rachel Caine and Anne Aguirre. This is a sci-fi fantasy story following Zara, who is essentially picked by this group called the Honors, which the Honors is selected by these weird alien sentient ships to explore space, like as their passengers. So they pick their passengers essentially, which is a really interesting concept. But when Zara is put on her mission and she starts to actually feel like she belongs with the alien race she's been tasked with, she has to decide what is really important, doing her job as an honor or feeling like she belongs. I find this to be a really interesting concept. This is a completed duology, and I haven't read a good sci-fi in a couple of months, so I want to get back into more and more sci-fi, and I think this will be a good starting point. Next, I'm continuing with my Maas readathon, and the next book is A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I am finally gotten to the point in my readathon where the next published work is not a Throne of Glass book, but the first ACOTAR book. So really intrigued to dive into ACOTAR again. It's been a while since I've actually read the book. Usually I listen to ACOTAR, and usually I'll skip ACOTAR altogether. And just move on to ACOMAF. So I'm really excited to jump back into this. I looked at my list. It'll go an ACOTAR book, a Throne of Glass book, an ACOTAR book for a while until we get to Crescent City. So really excited to be flipping between the two series by publication date. So I talk about this series, Throne of Glass, all the time. Up next, I have my Fairy Loot book from April. I just got this right after I got back from a Polycon, so I was really excited. And that is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. This is a beautiful copy of the book, but this is a fantasy, a darker fantasy based on Arthurian legend. We're following our main character, who is essentially an archaeologist, and her brother is cursed, and she is searching for something to free her brother, but she is not the only one. They're not called archaeologists, they're called followers. Trying to free her brother or trying to find this artifact. She gets thrust in with her rival into this dark magic surrounded around Arthurian legends and different archaeological aspects. So I'm really excited. The last book Alexandra Bracken came out with was based on Greek mythology, and I was pretty mid about that one, but I've heard really good things from the ARC readers about this book, so I'm really pumped up. Plus, it's just, look how pretty, and we've got art on the like everywhere. It's got a gorgeous spine. I love Arthurian legend stories. Love them. Legendborn is one of my favorite books, so I hope that this does that justice. Next, I have an old one, and that is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is her first big series. This blew up a while ago, early 2010s. That kind of generation of YA books, but this is an angel and devil fantasy romance. That's mainly what I know about this. And because all it says on the back is once upon a time an angel and the devil fell in love and bad things happen. So I'm not sure if we're following the angel and the devil or their child based on the title, because the back gives me nothing but that. So I have no idea, but I know I love Laini Taylor. I read her Strange the Dreamer duology that I loved. So I want to go back to her roots and see what this whole series is all about. Next, I have Forged in Fire and Stars by Andrea Robertson. This is a story based off of Norse mythology and Norse lore. And we're following our main character, Ara, who is a loresmith. And when the lost prince and princess steal her for a mission that they need a loresmith for, Ara's life is undoubtedly turned upside down because obviously this lost prince and princess want to retake their throne and they need a loresmith who is this fabled blacksmith in their history. So I'm intrigued to see what this loresmith blacksmith tie-in is. It's from the sounds of the synopsis, it's not only actually taking the throne but almost making it. So really intrigued if it's going to be like a very Game of Thronesy type of throne, or who has the throne, who has the actual power. Interested to see where the actual fantasy element comes in and see all the Norse mythology along with it. So really excited. This is one of those books that I've seen a lot of people really like, but this one flies under the radar. And I believe this is a completed duology as well. Up next I have Storm and Fury by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It's been a minute since I've read a JLA book. I think last year is when I reread From Blood and Ash, but this is very away from Blood and Ash. This actually came out beforehand. This is a gargoyle romance. We are following our main character who is slowly going blind and is being guarded by these gargoyles. But even though she's going blind, she can communicate with ghosts and spirits. So she's in hiding, and that is why she's being protected by these gargoyles, and somehow her location is let loose and she has to go on the run. I'm really intrigued to see. This is technically YA for JLA, so interested to see how she writes a young adult book. But I'm in the mood to read something JLA after a Polycon, so I'm not quite up to rereading From Blood and Ash again yet. I do need to get to Light in the Flame because I haven't read that yet, but so I figured I'd start with this one. I have this, and then I also have White Hot Kiss somewhere. It's around. Next, I have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This book was gifted to me a year or so ago. This is, I don't want to say it's one of her newer releases. This follows a young mother who just spent 5 years in prison, and when she is let out, she wants to reunite with her young daughter, but everyone in Kenna's life refuses to let her reconnect. So I believe it is going to be a story about forgiveness, regret, grief. Knowing it's a Colleen Hoover book, it's gonna take me on a roller coaster of emotions. I'm mentally prepared for that. And I'm really just intrigued as to why Kenna went to prison. What are we getting reminded of? I have so many questions. The last book on my official TBR is To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. This is another Polycon read. I did a poll on my Instagram to see which new to me author that I picked up from a Polycon to read, and the one that got the most votes was this book. So this is a dark romantasy story of Rapunzel. And I don't actually see a ton of Rapunzel retellings. I've seen a lot of ones done around the animated movie. And then there's Cress from the Cinder Chronicles. So other than that, I can't really think of a ton of Rapunzel retellings. So I'm excited to see what dark aspects we have, because this is a darker book. Plus, listening to Sarah A. Parker talk is the main reason I bought this book. She was talking about it at the Romantasy panel that I attended at a Polycon, and don't get me wrong, I bought a book from every person on that panel because they interested me in some fashion. This one just happened to win, and I don't think it's a completed series. I know 3 books are out. I'm hoping the other 2 are at least on KU, so when I undoubtedly fall in love with this, I can pick up books 2 and 3 immediately, at least on Kindle, until I can get physical copies once my book buying ban is over, because Lord knows I need that right now. And that's going to be my official TBR for May. I have a lot of really fun books that have been on my shelves for years that I'm finally getting to. But that's going to be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post every Wednesday, Friday, with the occasional Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!